We should be live.
We're live. Hello, folks. Bill and Brian with Energy Rogue. Brian, won't you roll our logo and your choice?
Well, let's first cover what are we going to talk about today?
We are going to talk about how I could possibly be wrong.
How natural gas, the bear thesis on natural gas to $2, crude to 50, and why we may not necessarily subscribe there. So we'll roll this and then we'll be back. Hey everybody. So thanks for joining, and let's see, we've got Bill and Brian, and we're going to discuss, there are a lot of bears out there, a lot of people that think we are going to stay at natural gas at $2, maybe even go down to $1.50. And then there are bears out there that talk about crude oil going to 50. And I've even seen a prediction, Bill, of 30. Now, do you believe any of that?
You know, Brian, there are things that happen in the world, and all of that is actually possible. But what we talk about when we talk is about probable.
Right.
So you sort of have to begin to do that. There are a lot of things that are possible. I mean, there are bad things that could happen that would be not necessarily bad things. There are good things that could happen that would take crude to $30. And some of the good things is that we find some magic energy source that's very transportable, that is high density energy. It's possible.
Anything is possible, and that's
not
actually
highly probable.
It's not highly probable, and we have to realize there's a balancing act between supply and demand, and actually suppliers or producers of natural gas and crude oil, in a lot of respects, don't want crude at $200 or gas at $10, because what that means is that it will destruct the demand because it will become too expensive.
Correct.
And that's
so no matter which way you go, there's always something that triggers something else.
So let's dive in.
You can't just take one. There's not just one step. Everything has multiple steps, and there's a lot of correlation. So let's dive in here.
Let's see. Well, let's first dive in and let's take a look at crude oil, and let's look at one of the interesting aspects is we had $80 crude just a few months ago.
Unbelievable.
And you know what's remarkable about this is this gap was created when OPEC announced a cut, and then we hung there for a few weeks and then fell back off.
So what you're saying is it didn't happen at the same time this time. When they announced a cut, it didn't go to 80.
Well, when they announced the cut this time, it actually went to, what is that, 75, 76, and then sold off right after. So what's ironic about this is after an announced cut, the market in the last two cut announcements went up and then dropped right off. But we're going to talk a little bit about fundamentals, but we're going to start with price and historical, where we've been. And there are a lot of reasons why natural gas why crude oil could go to 60, could go to 50, could go to 30. And what are most of those rationales around, Bill?
So I think most people are thinking of when it can go down is that the demand will go down, and the demand they're talking about is transportation demand around a lot of times the increased amount of electric vehicles.
Yep. And so when you look at the crude oil market, one of the things that we look at here is we look at supply, we look at demand, and we look at exports and imports. And that matrix kind of tells us the balance of the market. The net, pardon me, the net of those end up into stocks on crude oil. It's called storage on natural gas, but it's stocks on crude oil. And one of the interesting things that we look at and we track on our site, among other things, is most of the market looks at commercial crude stocks, and those are where those are where the stocks are evaluated at how much barrels are going in or out of stocks. But what we take a look at is we look at crude and total products, and because of this yellow area, you could take a look and see that we are beneath our 5-year minimum. We are setting new 5-year minimums for storage or for stocks. And SPR is way below because we have been drawing that down over time. Are we going to fill that? I don't know. That would add demand to the equation.
I'm not sure we've stopped drawing yet.
I don't think we have. But what that means is we're more, when stocks are low, we are more vulnerable to supply disruptions. And one of the interesting aspects that we take a look at, if you're interested in our platform, book a meeting. We have a platform. It's $89 a month. We cover natural gas fundamentals, crude oil fundamentals, NGLs fundamentals, and technicals on oil, gas, and products.
And we throw in electricity just for fun.
Electricity maps. We got over 140, maybe 50 now. I don't know, different charts, and we hold weekly videos with our customers. So if you want to join, you can find the link down below. You can book a meeting if you're interested, if you're intrigued. But we're not here to sell that. We're here to talk about kind of the market. And one of the interesting things that we take a look at is we take a look at crude oil, or not crude oil, we look at rigs. So in 20, from COVID to today, we increased our rigs. But what a lot of people haven't realized yet is we have been dropping rigs at a very fast rate. And that rig drop is going to translate to supply disruption. So as we go down in stocks, which we covered over here, when we go down in stocks, when we have crude and products at new 5-year minimums, that means we are going to be more vulnerable. And these rig count drops, a lot of people look at oil production, but one of the interesting things is in decline. Let's take one of the most prolific plays in the country in Wolfcamp. They come on first month and produce 1380 barrels a day. By month 12, they're at 217. That means they have to add more and more and more and continue to bring on. So when we slow the pace on our drilling rigs, this is going to have impact on supply. And one of the things that we track shale oil decline, which is currently close to 600,000 barrels a day on 12.4 million of barrels a day of production. Our new production is now down to 610. So let's take a look at that. We're at 600, 610. So what that means, we take a look at the net change, and that net change is how many barrels a day did we add of the shale basin areas. And we had to bring on over 660,000 barrels a day to add 15,000 barrels, right?
So what you're saying, there's not a spigot we just turn our oil on.
Mm-mm. No, it's a treadmill.
Right.
And the treadmill slowly increases over time for those of you that don't like treadmills, that slow incline that they have. But when we take a look at the fundamentals, a lot of people look at the bears. Let's talk about the bears for a second. not the football team. We'd be
The
here all
Bears,
we'd be here all day, wouldn't we?
not me.
So if we take a look back in 2018 in the U.S., we were producing or 2017, 18, we were producing 9 million barrels a day. We're now up to 12.4. Okay. So a lot of people look at this growth curve and think it's just going to continue forever. Well, one interesting thing that we take a look at is if you take a look at right here, we have been bouncing around for the past few weeks. When the numbers come out, I expect this number to come back down. But we've been bouncing around between 12.2 and 12.4. Most of the time at 12.3. So when I take a look at the declines and when I take a look at the rigs dropping, declines are about to start catching us. When June numbers catch up, we're going to be in trouble, which means we're going to be importing more. Now, what did OPEC just announce?
Well, they're going to cut their million, but they've always announced they're going to cut some. I think what we'll see is us picking up stuff from Venezuela, which will be
Now
interesting.
Venezuela. Let's take a look at that. What we got here is we have production history for all of OPEC. So we can see a steady decline in Venezuela. It's been growing since COVID, not much though. So it's going to take a lot of development.
Yes. But I'm saying that the oil is actually underground. So it's going to take development. So it's probably 6 months out at bare minimum before you see any significant increase.
But I think that's
and that would
probably
take,
half, maybe 500,000 barrels a day on 100 million globally.
but the other thing is going to take some capital investment. I just don't think the capital investment's there. So
Right.
if I was looking at a bear, I would be looking at demand, saying demand's going to go down because of electric vehicles. I think there's things you can go both ways there on. Yeah, we're going to do. We don't have the grid, we don't have the raw minerals, but we also have a lot of will to make that, and a lot of government subsidies to make electric vehicles happen. But when you start looking at transportation as a part of crude oil, it's a significant part, but it's not the only part. And so, it's hard to make an electric ship. It's hard to make an electric jet. And so there are things in there this is where the bears say, well, we're going to be all electrified by 2030 or 2050. You pick whichever your poison is there. And there's a lot of stuff that has to happen to make that happen. And I'm not sure that it can happen physically. So I can be surprised. I mean, with enough money, things change.
What's fascinating is we're low on our gasoline stocks, distillate stocks. There's a lot of demand concerns, and justifiably so. There's data and indicators from the market and internationally that we are about to have a slowing demand period. Weak numbers have been reported out of China. So that's
and I think when we come to demand, China is the wildcat there as far as the wild card. And so I think everybody's guessing with China. And the only thing I know about China, everybody who predicts what's happening in China is always wrong, because we really never know what's happening in China. But the Chinese demand, if it goes down, we have bigger problems than oil. Because
it's a financial. Well, I mean, you can have a test case of that. What happened during COVID? We had a supply shock and a demand shock.
Right.
And a lot of that, the demand, not only on natural gas and crude oil, but in everything.
Right. So let's talk about natural gas. Okay.
All right. Let's flip the curve, and let's take a look at natural gas.
So
Well,
two major impacts of natural gas is always weather. And now, just in the last few years, the new one has been LNG exports.
yep.
And so prior to that, prior to LNG exports, the other thing was actual electricity demand, because this electricity demand went up. Natural gas was the key source to be replacing coal. Now, we still have a lot of coal plants operating. We still have a lot of natural gas plants operating. Renewables are having trouble. I mean, they're building as fast as they can, but they're still a decade out from being a significant part of the grid.
Well, you can take a look, and this is part of the electric that we cover. You can just take a look at this curve. Green is natural gas. Then you have nuclear and crude, believe it or not, on electricity production. But out of 500,000, let's call it 400 to 500,000, let's just take a look at the renewables real quick. We have combination at its peak, close to 80,000. So, 18%, but at its trough, less than 5%.
But this
So
is is this megawatt capacity?
no, this is what has been produced over the last 18 hours. So
Okay.
we track, we pull this in
So
so that we can take a look at what that's going to do for natural gas
so
demand.
you can see where the night drops off and the wind drops off at night as well.
Yep.
But so does demand. So some people would say they were perfectly balanced. I'm not sure I'd go that far, but
Right.
what I'm saying is let's just say that we have less natural gas. Let's say you couldn't fill in those peaks with natural gas. What would happen?
Right.
You
I,
know,
I, I mean, the fact of the matter is that we'll save this topic for another day, but there is another infrastructure problem that we're going to have on the natural gas side, meeting the displacement between peak and trough. It's a
right?
different duck. It's a different duck demand profile for electricity, and we're not
But
going to have enough capacity to fill
I
that.
think my point is that it's not the large draw it used to be right now.
Right.
So
So
what's the LNG is in. So the big thing that could take gas down, obviously, if LNG demand goes down.
so
So where does
here's what.
LNG go?
What's that?
Where does LNG go? Europe and Asia.
Yep.
So when you see demand for imported LNG, and remember, LNG is their most expensive energy source. And
Yes.
so when you see the demand go down on LNG, you're going to see the price of gas. I'm presenting the bear case here. You can see the price of gas go down. And now the other side of that is, without capital and with lower prices, you're going to see less investment in natural gas wells. And
Right.
so now when you start seeing that decline catches up with new production, and you start getting a scarcity commodity, which drives the price back up. So the while the amount of gas could go down and our usage of gas could go down, the price actually could go up. So when you say it's bear or bullish, you can be bear on production, but would make you bullish on price, or you can be bullish on production, would make you bearish on price.
Well, and you can take a look. Here's where the bear thesis starts. It starts with production. We have grown from 2018 to today. So 5 years. In 5 years, we've grown from 73 BCF a day to over 100. That's phenomenal growth. That is phenomenal growth. So the problem with the thesis is we have been growing demand, and we have been growing. Take a look at this on exports. Um, oh wait, that's imports. This is imports drive production. And where is the demand weekly? Take a look at this. This is the one I was looking for. LNG exports.
Yeah, take it from 2018.
Yeah. So we had 2.2 to over 14. We're off a little bit because of some spring maintenance, but now let's add in one more variable. Mexico exports. Now we're pushing 20 when we started off around 5. So we've added 15 BCF a day of, I'm going to
Demand.
call it demand. It's not really demand because it does depend on
So
international.
let's call it 15 BCF of exports.
But here's the challenge to the bear thesis. The bear thesis is this 101 BCF a day is going to be 110, 115. We don't see that. As a matter of fact, we'll step into that in just a bit, but it's going to be harder to maintain, but these exports keep increasing. So we're going to have close to, and I have it on here, LNG.
Yeah. I don't believe the big giant purple thing.
Yeah, I take that off. So let's take it out to 2025. And where are we? We are in June, July. Here's where we are right now on LNG capacity. So it's a little throttled back right now because of some work that's being done, but this is LNG export capacity. So we're going to stair step up and we're going to get close to, actually, we're going to get to
It's right at 20, isn't it?
Right at 20 in 2025. So we're going to add another 8 BCF a day or 7 BCF a day of export capacity. Now, if some of that goes, I mean, if 5 of it goes, we are talking about probably 25 to 30% of our supply matrix being committed to international markets. So this is very important, but this is why we take a look at what the shale decline is on natural gas, which is close to 3 BCF a day, a little over. And we take a look at what production we're bringing on, which is currently dropping because of all the rig drops, and we're down close to 3.4 BCF a day. So this is our net change. So we have to bring on 3.4 BCF a day to add 200,000, or actually less than that, 180,000. So think about that. 180,000 to 3.4. We have to bring 3.4 BCF a day to add 180,000 MCF a day. So I don't think we're going to be able to keep up because the new rig drops have not settled in. But if we take a look at our demand profile, this right here, this grid is super important because this shows what our supply is, what our net imports from Canada, imports, LNG imports. Believe it or not, we import some. I don't know why. And then you have natural gas demand, power and industrial and residential. A lot of that is going to be seasonal. And the bears are really talking about the fact that we just filled storage during this past winter. Yes, we did, but we had one of the warmest winters in the last 130 years.
Right. And also, I mean, people need to realize that, and I always hate when I say that, people don't have to realize anything, but it's not your daddy's oil field.
No.
Things have changed and it's a lot different. And what Brian, I was telling Brian earlier that he needs to watch out for the Texas two-step. And to me, the Texas two-step is one, Permian production on oil, because that's the big driver in the U.S. And the other is imports are to go, natural gas exports are going out through Texas, which would be Mexico and LNG. Because when you look at that, they are nearly 1/4 to 1/3 of the total production market demand.
Well, so Permian produces 5.7 million barrels a day, but let's take a look at the decline there in the Permian.
5.7 of our 12 million.
Yes.
Right.
Which is
So
why everybody focuses on the so that 5.7 declines 350,000 barrels a day every single month. And what is our net change? We are only adding 9,000 barrels a day.
yeah.
So think about that. Think about that. We're only adding in the Permian 9,000 barrels a day. And our new production in the Permian is, let's take this off. All these charts are interactive. So we had to bring on 370,000 barrels a day of Permian production to add 9,000 barrels.
And so folks realize that from February till this, I think our last deal on rigs was in April. That count, we've dropped 50 rigs total.
Yeah.
And
May
so
is the last one we're picking up, but June we've dropped even that much more.
So as we go down the rigs, production becomes more important. So the lack of capital funding always goes away until people can make a lot of money. And then it seems to start showing back up from usually a different source.
Yep.
So, Brian, like I said, watch out for that Texas two-step.
Yep. And if you want to know more, book a meeting with us down below. You can also reach out to us, email us. And if you do like this, I got to say it, for the algorithms, like, subscribe, do all that stuff. Drop us a comment. Drop us a comment. We try and get back to everybody. But if you want a personal connection and you want to talk a little bit about the markets, book a meeting with us. The link's down below.
We love to visit with you guys.
So listen, thank you for joining. Appreciate you signing in. Appreciate you looking at it. If you have any questions, reach out. I'm Brian. This is Bill. This way.
Yeah, I think so.
That way. I think that shows right. So we got to do the Brady Bunch thing. So that's all I had. You have any closing thoughts, Bill?
I don't know. As Marsha would say, watch out for the Texas two-step.
All right, folks. Have a good week. Reach out to us if you got any questions. Have a good day.
See you, folks.